Hello everyone, welcome and thank you for joining ADESA Group for our webinar series, ACP Options for Your Workforce Management. Today is WorkForce Software Day. It is the last day of the demos. In a moment, we will be joined by today's speakers, Tony Absalom and Gordon Gilkison from WorkForce Software. In today's presentation, we will have a demo of WorkForce Software, a cloud solution to consider for your workforce management. We'll get an overview of how it looks like and what are its capabilities. As I said, we are delighted to host Tony Absalom, who is Partners and Indirect Channels Lead in EMEA, and Gordon Gilkison, who is Solution Director, both for from WorkForce Software. I'm sure that you are willing to learn more from them, so let's kick off. Welcome, Tony and Gordon, and thanks for joining. The stage is yours.
Thank you, Sylvia, and thank you to ADESA, our valued partners, for allowing us to be part of this excellent series of webinars for customers and prospects to understand more about what can be done and what's possible in terms of solutions for time, attendance, and forecasting and scheduling for SAP's HCM customers. So, as you mentioned, I'm joined by my pre-sales director for EMEA, Gordon Gilkison. I'm going to probably concentrate on giving you guys an overview of our business, the market, in terms of what we see the challenges are for HCM and HR professionals today and moving forward into the complex future that we all live in now. And then Gordon is going to give you a brief demo of our core technology and also just an overview of some quite significant innovation that we're launching into the market in January of 2020. And then I'll touch upon a couple of customer examples that hopefully will be relevant to you guys, and then we'll be delighted to take some Q&A from the audience and wrap this up. So I'll just kind of start by talking about our organization in more detail. So WorkForce Software, one moment, I'm just going to change the slides here, it won't be a second. My clumsy fingers have just hit one of the slides there for a second. I do apologize. Yeah, WorkForce Software have been around over 20 years. We are a ground up SaaS company, ground up a workforce management provider. We like to consider ourselves to be the world's leading independent, purely focused organization on workforce management software. We have over 1,000 customers across the globe, very diversely spread across the globe, around 3 million users across those 60 countries, 60 plus countries, and we have a really strong, significant customer retention rate. So we're very much foundation up in terms of our position in the marketplace and the solutions we deliver. We're in a very much of a growth phase. We've had a lot of investment in the last 12 months, a significant new organization invested in the business, so hence why we're able to work on taking new innovative solutions to the market for our customers and for the SAP SuccessFactors implementations. We have offices across the globe, significant footprint in EMEA, a number of large customers, and we work with some excellent partners such as ADESA, who we've worked on successful projects recently, which have been a great success. We have offices in the US and also globally across the Far East, Australia, and soon in other areas of EMEA. Our solution is a broad suite, so time and attendance has been touched upon in the concentrated on in the webinars today, is an absolute core part of that, but it's a suite of solutions which doesn't just concentrate on time and attendance, but also on scheduling, forecasting, and how that works from a compliance perspective, and how that can help organizations become much more operationally efficient. So we see our differentiators as being around that, about that complete suite, about having a very open platform which is easy to deploy and manage across what we see as our sweet spot, which is complex organizations, rules, and scenarios. We have global partnerships with all of the major SIs and alliances, but more importantly, I believe we have strong local relationships in territories across every region with people such as the excellent ADESA, and we are happy to work with organizations to ensure that they get the best delivery that suits their fit. It's key to just reaffirm what our relationship is with SAP. We are what's known as a Solex partner for SAP, which is SAP have gone to market and decided the vendors that they want to work with specifically to complement and integrate with their core solutions. We've been doing that with SAP for a few years now, and we have in excess of 200 integrated, satisfied customers on Solex. These are across many, many countries where organizations have a solution that crosses multiple entities, rules and regulations. And as I say, millions of users. There's some core users on here, and I can always share some European ones if required as well. So I wanted to just talk about the problem a little bit, and this hopefully will resonate with you guys, and you'll see some similarities to the challenges you're facing moving forward, which is in essence the growing gap between what has been the norm to date around the domains of expertise of the core functions within organizations. So a lot of the changes in work methodologies and in-country laws and rules and compliance has meant that it's very difficult to be able to provide accuracy in both the HR core data, and then that rolls into payroll for people to be able to be paid accurately, to understand costs, to understand the employee, to understand exactly what they're able to do, and how they can basically plan effectively to work in a happy manner and to make their work easy. And this is because, of course, of the number of changes that we've seen particularly in Europe over the last 20, 25 years in each different country, around, going right back to the European Working Directive. But moving forward for each geography, you'll see a number of laws that a workforce management solution has to be able to incorporate into a platform that goes across different entities. And of course, one of the primary drivers of that is that we've all moved into a mobile-first working method, and our innovation and the way that we produce our solution to make it best for not just the employers but also the employees is to make that a mobile-first platform. I think if you kind of spend a minute just looking at this, I won't go through all these, but these really are the core problems that organizations are facing today when they're trying to put in a digitally transformed, synchronized and integrated HCM solution to manage and deliver against these challenges and opportunities. So you will see a lot of issues with HR being able to provide data and retain data accurately, to be able to ensure that the organization then doesn't have a lot of cost that can be avoided, a lot of errors that can be avoided, and therefore an awful lot of unsettled staff retention, because employees don't feel that they're being managed efficiently, their time is being managed effectively, but of course their pay isn't getting managed effectively. This is an issue that an awful lot of organizations today have in all those regards, and it affects the employee satisfaction, as I say. We are recognized as an innovation leader, and I just want to add to this, because this slide just needs slightly updating. The software reviews and the nucleus research, we are now 2 years running. They've just been announced again. We are again the leader in these reviews, and it's very important to understand, particularly in software reviews, that's from the user base. So that's not somebody from, no disrespect to Gartner, but this is not somebody who has been, promoted to do this. This is from the user base that use solutions, and again, we are the leader in that review. So this shows you some of the innovation, the core innovation that we've done over that time, moving into this year and into next year about the new workforce user experience. A couple of core customers that we have who have deployed our solution, again, in integrating scenarios with SuccessFactors. They've seen extraordinary value from that, and we're very proud that we have quite an extensive range of referenceable customers that we can engage with new organizations across multiple industries, be that your retail, manufacturing, services sectors, education, numbers of different areas. So it's a very proud thing for us to be able to say that. Again, one thing that I want to emphasize, particularly for our European and EMEA organizations, is that we have extensive experience about the variety of challenges that organizations will face, be that in country or be that across multiple entities. What I'm going to do now, that's enough of me talking, and I'll come back to wrap up subsequently, but I'm going to hand across to Gordon Gilkerson, our pre-sales director, who's just going to go into some demo and show you some of the core elements of our solution and touch upon, as I say, the innovation that we're bringing to market as we speak and are launching at the beginning of next month. Gordon.
Thanks, Tony. So yeah, let me just bring some of what Tony's been talking about to life. Tony did mention about the 3 core modules, if you like, within the WorkForce software suite, and that includes forecasting, then moving into scheduling, and then of course into time and attendance. But when he was looking at one of those challenges on one of those slides earlier, and part of that was around the employee. Employee engagement is one of the core values of WorkForce software, both in terms of ourselves as an employer, and it also it's one of the pillars in which we base our software development. So you will see, I'll show you in a moment, for example, how the employees can collaborate with that whole workforce management process, how they can take back some of the control around their work-life balance. So, for example, using the employee kiosk, or more commonly now on the mobile app, how they can interact by requesting some time off, managing their availability and preferences, offering to work additional shifts, and so on. So if I quickly move to my mobile phone, so this is let me just get this working again, 1 second. Okay, so here we see my mobile, and here I can see the WorkForce software app. And the first thing I see on here, for example, is a calendar, and I can see my days of the week where I am either working in orange or where I have some time off in grey. If I click on a specific shift, I can then see that on Monday, the 16th of December, I'm working in Glasgow, I'm working in management, and I have a 10-hour shift, for example. I can also see my co-workers on that day who I'm working with and who's in my team. And that's quite important, because if I'm offering to work in an additional shift, I might want to see who's working, or who I would be working with on that shift, for example. I can also manage my availability. Now, this is different to my shift. This is not when I am working. This is just when I am generally available. And we can see that I'm quite a flexible employee. I'm typically available all day. But let's say, for example, that on Tuesday, the 10th of December, I had a doctor's appointment and I couldn't get to work until, let's say, 10 o'clock in the morning on that specific day. I can then send that change request to my availability through to my manager, who would then approve or reject that availability change request. Now, as I say, that's not telling me, I'm saying to my manager, I want to work a 10 till midnight shift on Tuesday, the 10th of December. It's just saying, when you're creating the schedule for that week, or when, as I will show you later, when the optimizer is automatically creating the schedule for that week, don't plan me before 10 o'clock, because I don't want to use a day's annual leave just for a 1-hour doctor's appointment. I can also offer to work additional shifts. So if, for example, a shift becomes unfilled at short notice, or an additional shift has been created at short notice because of an increase in demand or some unforeseen event, or someone goes off sick at the last minute, rather than the manager calling around and trying to find someone to fill that shift, they can simply advertise that shift. And everyone who has both the skill and the availability to work that shift will receive a push notification on the mobile, if they enable push notifications, and then have the ability to offer to work that shift. So I would quite like to work an extra shift on Saturday, the 21st of December, and I can then send that offer through to my manager. I can also swap shifts. So let's say, for example, on Friday, the 20th of December, a friend of mine has a ticket for a concert and got me a ticket, and it's somebody I'd really like to go see, but it's short notice. The chances of me getting some annual leave approved are pretty slim. But what I could do potentially is swap shifts on that day. So I could then be presented with a list of alternative days that I could work. So I'd be prepared to swap on these days. I could even do a same day swap. I'm working in the evening, but I would swap to work in the morning, for example. It will then present me a list of shifts that are available to swap with and those people who could swap. And I know that Mike is a good friend of mine. So I'm going to send a request now to Mike. Mike would receive a push notification on his phone to say that Gordon would like to swap shifts. If Mike is happy, he would then accept that shift swap, and then a further message would be sent to our manager to say Gordon and Mike have arranged a shift swap. Are you okay with that? The manager would then either approve or reject that shift swap. If they approve it, all of the schedules and timesheets get updated automatically, and we get notification back saying that that shift swap has been approved by our manager. You can also book leave time off using the mobile app, but I'll cover that in the employee kiosk when we move into time and attendance from the employee's perspective. So that's a quick view of the mobile. The mobile is available like the entire product suite in many different languages, and I can just simply select my first language as necessary. So then we move on to, so that's the mobile from the employee's perspective. But it's no good giving the employee all of these tools in order to help them be more engaged if we don't close that loop by giving the manager similar tools to support that process. So from a manager's perspective, I also have an app. And here I can see the WorkForce Assistant. Now, the WorkForce Assistant, as Tony alluded to earlier, there's some really exciting, innovative new stuff that we'll be releasing in January 2020. And the WorkForce Hub and the WorkForce Assistant is part of that release set. It will also include a new dynamic scheduling module and a whole set of open APIs and much improved integration functionality. So as a manager, I can see now my assistant. I can see, for example, items that are urgent that I need to deal with quickly. So for example, it's telling me that in this case that Wilton Betts was supposed to start work at 8 o'clock this morning, but hasn't arrived yet. And so it's alerting me to the fact that he is late or has not turned in. And I have some actions that I can then take. I can either create an absence record for him, or I can fill his shift if it needs filling at short notice by advertising it out to the wider workforce. But in order to support those engaged employees by swapping shifts and so on, I have the ability to quickly and easily either approve or reject those shift swaps or time off requests, because there's no point in an employee in a timely manner arranging to swap shifts, for example, if the manager only does their admin every Friday afternoon. And by that time, that shift swap would have expired. So this gives the manager the ability to be, we call it being productive in the moment. So while I'm on the go, I can, or whether I'm on the shop floor or whether I'm on the sales floor, excuse me, I can very quickly review these requests from employees. I can see these two people want to make a shift swap, and most importantly, I can see at the bottom there are no exceptions associated with that shift swap. So it's doing the validation to make sure that nobody is incurring premium overtime, for example, or they're booking excessive hours against a specific reference period time bank by making that shift swap that goes across a different time bank. Moving on to the system proper. Okay, so as Tony said before, we are Solex, a solution extension partner for SAP. What that in effect means is that this is a just an additional module that SAP sell if they're selling success factors. And obviously we need to be fully integrated within success factors, both from a UI perspective and a single sign-on perspective, and also from a data perspective. So anybody that's onboarded within success factors will automatically appear within the WorkForce modules. So logging into success factors as an employee, Faith Marshall, you can start to see here all of those things that are familiar within success factors. So if I was Faith, I'm a new employee and I wanted to check my org chart, for example, I can quickly do that. I want to see my manager and I can see my co-workers. I can see my manager, in this case is Jeff Hill, and I can see my team. But we also within success factors have the two modules, WorkForce modules of time and attendance and forecasting and scheduling, and some additional tiles here. So for example, if I wanted to check my bank balances, how much annual leave do I have remaining? I have 8 days. How much sickness do I have, or paid sickness do I have left? I've got 20 hours of paid sickness left in my bank for the current year. So I've got 8 days leave. I might think, well, okay, well, I fancy having some time off. So I can then click on time and attendance. Within time and attendance, I could view my timesheet, for example. So I could see what my clocking in and out for the current week is. You can see any exceptions on here, and we'll deal with those later. And I can also view my time off. So I can see I've had a previous time off request, but I want to create a new one. I can select a time off type. We can have as many of those as necessary. It could be jury service, it could be paid sickness, it could be a hospital appointment, whatever it might be. But I want to book some annual leave, and I want to take let's say I wanted to have a week off. And what we can see is that although I've booked a week off, it's actually only going to decrement my balance by 5 days because it knows I don't typically work Saturday and Sunday, for example. But rather than book that week off, let's just book a single day or request a single day. And I can now submit that to my manager for approval. I can now see that added to my list of outstanding leave requests. So let's log out and log back in now as Faith's manager, who was, if we remember, Jeff Hill. So now for Jeff, what does a week in the life of managing the workforce look like? Well, we're going to look at forecasting, we're going to look at scheduling, and we're going to look at time and attendance. We do that in chronological order because the whole process begins with the forecast. If we go into forecasting and scheduling, first thing we can see, we get some additional tiles here. We can see any messages coming through from employees. So if we remember that I requested an availability change because I had that doctor's appointment, that comes through here now, and as a manager I can moderate that availability change request and either approve it or reject it from here. We also want to know how well each of our locations are scheduling. So you might be the type of manager who likes to plow through numerous graphs to try and work out what's going on. We believe that fundamentally less is more, and I want to be able to see at a glance and quickly how well each of my locations are scheduling. And we've all used TripAdvisor and we've all used Amazon product reviews, and we're all very familiar with the 5-star rating. So I can see at a glance that in the week of the 2nd of the 12th, that Manchester might be scheduling pretty well, whereas Leeds is scheduling pretty badly. Which then raises the question, what constitutes a 5-star or 4-star schedule? So this is an aggregate or a summary review of a number of different KPIs that contribute towards this schedule quality rating. You can define, we have something in the region of 15 individual KPIs. You can select which ones are important to you. You can select the relevant scores of each of those individual KPIs and the relative importance of each of those KPIs. And just to give you a clue as to how that works. Here we can see, in this case, I've selected 4 KPIs. Service level. Service level is of the work that needs to be done. How much am I servicing with the resource I have available? It's also typically a measure of shortage. Ineffectiveness, conversely, is is a measure of wasted hours or overstaffing. So if I need 5 people but I've scheduled 6, then I've got 20% overstaffing. Sales to labour cost might be important in hospitality and retail, and schedule to budget hours variance. And then we can also turn on and off other KPIs and add them to that schedule quality rating. And as I say, we can define the relative importance of each of those. And you as a customer, as a user, super user, are able to maintain this yourself. So as you deploy the system, you might set these at a fairly low level. And then as time goes on, you start to get more efficiency gains out of improved scheduling. You can start to crank these up. So coming back here, I might ask a question: why is Manchester only got a 4.5-star schedule? I expect all of my locations to get 5-star schedules. So we can simply have a quick look. And here we can see, if we hover, those individual KPIs. So what's bringing it down? So ineffectiveness is bringing it down. That means I've got more people scheduled than I need. And our service level is also not perfect. It's 93%, but that's not too bad. But we can then see what that looks like graphically. And quite simply here, we can see that on a Saturday and a Sunday, the red line indicates the requirement, the number of people we need by activity within our location. And the blue line indicates what we've got scheduled. So I can see I have more people scheduled on a Thursday and Friday than I need, and not enough on a Saturday and Sunday. I could simply edit this schedule. And if I wanted to make some changes, for example, I could move this person from here to here, change their shift, and we can see how that impacts the graphs at the top. And we can see how it impacts service level and then effectiveness as well. Perhaps moving somebody from here to the Sunday, and so on, just until we improve those KPIs and get that schedule back up to a 5-star schedule. And also giving us warnings: if we try and do anything that breaks any rules when we're manually adjusting this schedule, we get feedback immediately from the system. In this case, it's telling us that this person isn't available, but I can override that. Some rules can't be overridden. We can set hard parameters or hard rules that will stop a schedule being published. For example, if some sort of legislative rule is being broken. And here I can see the before and after. I was a 93% service level. I've moved that up to 94, and effectiveness down from 13 to 12. So that's just showing you the power of the schedule quality rating, how I can very quickly see those locations, departments, units, factories, shops, whatever it might be, where I've got a scheduling issue, and then focus in on the specific elements of it that are bringing that schedule quality rating down. So let's begin with forecasting. As a manager, the first thing I've been presented with is a forecast, and that's two types of forecast. A forecast of business volume. So the system will historically load actual business volume data. So it could be any type of business volume. It could be number of units manufactured. It could be retail sales. It could be passenger numbers on an aircraft. It could be number of patients in a hospital ward. Any business volume that drives workload demand. In this example, we're using retail sales. So what we would have done here is we would have loaded historic sales data, and that will do two things. It will generate shapes of business. When are we busy? What days of the week are we busy? What times of the day are we busy? What times of the day are we quiet? What types of day are we busy? Is it a public holiday? Is it a different shape on a public holiday than a normal week? If I select one of my locations, and the system will then automatically predict a level of business based upon one of a number of different algorithms which is applied to that historic actual data to forecast what's going to happen in future weeks. And that is then distributed. If that's the weekly total, Let's make this a bit bigger. Okay, and that's then distributed across the days of the week, that 24,000 euros or units manufactured, whatever it might be, based upon an underlying shape for a normal week. And that is continually updated each week, every time we load in that actual business volume data. As a manager, I can edit this forecast. I'm the person with local knowledge. I might think I'm going to have a particularly good week, so I'm going to increase that forecast, and it will redistribute that additional 3,000 across the days of the week based upon that underlying shape for a normal week, 13% on a Monday, 12% on a Tuesday, and so on. Or I may think on a Friday, I'm going to have a 10% increase, and it will apply that 10% across each of our different business type, whether it be sales, footfall, passenger numbers, etc. That's the first part of the forecasting process, which is to predict those business volumes. The second part is to convert those business volumes into a staffing requirement or a headcount requirement or a labour demand, whichever you call it, number of hours or people required to service that level of business. The way in which it does that is unique for every one of our customers. Each one has their own unique configuration. Some are very simplistic, some are very, very complex, using detailed labour standards, time taken to serve a customer at the bar or at a cash desk, time taken to deal with a patient of a specific level of acuity, time taken to turn around an aircraft. All of those sorts of things can be configured within the application to provide us with that requirement in terms of labour demand hours. So in order to service that level of business, I need 506 hours in this week. Once we've determined the requirement, we need to then schedule people to that demand requirement. So here again, if I select my site, I can see for each of the weeks, I can see that schedule quality rating. I can see the number of hours that have been scheduled for that week. I can see the number of shifts that have been created. I can see whether that schedule has been published or not. I can also see a status summary, and I can see whether I've got any exceptions of specific type. Have I got unassigned shifts, for example? And I can filter that so I can see, yes, in each of these weeks I've got some unassigned shifts that I need to ideally fill. If I want to create a schedule, let's say we need to create a schedule for the week of 23rd of December, and let's ignore that Christmas is in this week for demo purposes. First of all, I want to see our demand. So this is the output from the forecasting process. And this all happens in the background. There's no need for the end user to interact with this. It's all happening under the hood automatically. Every time we load in that historic data, it updates everything and then automatically generates this demand based upon the unique configuration for each customer, for each location for each customer. So again, if this was a retail scenario, that shape would be unique for that individual shop. We can see this for different activities. We have cashier, so we need a different shape. So here we can see the cashier requirements. We need more people, obviously, on a Saturday at the weekend when the store is busier. We can see it for management. We need one manager, for example, or two managers on a Friday, and so on, until we see that demand requirement for the whole store. Now we need to schedule people against this demand, and this is a deliberately spiky demand profile. Unlike manufacturing, where, for example, it would just perhaps be 5 people the whole day for a 24-hour shift operation, this is a much more difficult scheduling problem to solve because we can't control when customers come in and out of our stores. We support multiple different methods of scheduling. You can schedule by manually creating some shifts. You can use a template of previously defined shift patterns, whether that be a single week pattern or a multi-week rotational pattern. Those templates can have people assigned to them because that's what they work, and they work the same pattern every week. Or it could be unassigned. We know that the pattern is the same every week, but who works those shifts within that pattern may differ on a weekly basis. Or we may just ask the system to create the best possible shift pattern for us. And we do that using our schedule optimizer. With one click of the button, what it's now doing is, excuse me, It knows a requirement in terms of headcount and also in terms of skill. Can you work the cash register? Are you a good salesperson? What are the constraints around our people? What are the contractual constraints, legislative constraints, working time directive constraints, min-max hours per day, per week? What skills do you have? When are you available? Do you have a doctor's appointment on a certain date that means you can't work before 10 o'clock in the morning? Are you on vacation or annual leave? Takes all of that into consideration. It's looking at hundreds of millions of different schedule combinations to produce the best possible schedule that it can automatically at the press of a button. And here we can see now it's never going to be perfect. You're never going to get someone to work just for 15 minutes for a shift to come and fill a peak in demand for a small period of time, but it's doing a pretty good job. And here we can see it's got a 97% service level and 2% ineffectiveness. Now this is a retail example. We do lots and lots of benchmarking of different verticals, hospitality, retail, manufacturing. But if you take retail as an example, one of the most complex scheduling problems because of that volatile demand profile, typically when we benchmark customers or prospects who have been using spreadsheets or some other method to create these schedules, typically service level is around 80% and ineffectiveness is around 15%. And that's what we're about, moving that 80% service level up to 97 to improve your opportunity to generate increased revenue and take that ineffectiveness, those wasted hours, from that 15% mark down to the low single figures, which is a straightforward reduction in cost. Okay, and of course, the all-important schedule, making sure we have a compliant schedule in terms of legislation, making sure people aren't working when they said they're not available, making sure they're only working on activities that they're skilled to do. Once we're happy with that, we then save it and publish it. That will then send a push notification out to each individual employee, informing them of when they're supposed to be working in that week. Then we move on to, so once we've published the schedule, we want to record what's actually happened against the plan. And that's done in time and attendance. So Jeff logs into time and attendance. The first thing we see, of course, for those people who do like plowing through lots of graphs, we have them. Here we can see levels of overtime worked. We can look at absence hours. You can filter this on and off if you just wanted to look at sick time, for example. You can see that here. You can also look at it in terms of a dashboard, so you can have multiple graphs open at the same time. I can also see time off requests. So if we remember, Faith requested a day off on the 15th. Here, as a manager, either if I was, I can approve this obviously on the WorkForce Assistant on the mobile app. But if I was in the main application doing some other work, I can also approve that leave request here as well. The time and attendance is about paying. It's about two things mainly. One, it's about paying people accurately, and it's also about managing people's attendance. What do we mean by that? We want to know when people have arrived late. We want to know if they've left early. We want to know if we need to approve overtime, if they've worked additional hours. We need to know if they've broken any specific rules around maximum working hours per day per week. So here we can see those exceptions that have been created. Some of these exceptions are critical. We can filter those on and off. And I might want to only deal with those critical exceptions. Both Jane and Faith didn't clock in or clock out. Now, how do we record attendance? Record actual attendance through any type of device, whether that be a traditional clock on the wall with some sort of a magnetic strip card or barcode or biometric, or perhaps even a web clock, or even clocking in and out on the mobile. Every time that attendance is recorded, it's compared with the plan. And if everything is okay, you've attended when you were supposed to, then the manager need to do nothing. However, that's not always the case, and sometimes exceptions are created. So people do forget to clock in, clock out, or arrive late, leave early, that sort of thing. I have to deal with those. And I can simply pick these exceptions. Make it nice and simple. Yeah, okay, yes, Jane did come to work and did leave at 4 o'clock, so I can simply save that and clear that exception for Jane. But let's look at Faith's timesheet in a little bit more detail. Here we can see for the week, Jane's clocked in, clocked out, clocked in, clocked out. And we can see this exception. She clocked in, but she didn't clock out. Well, actually, what happened with Jane is that she had an accident at work, and she left to go home at 12. And I can record that as well. I can put some comments in here. Plus, I can then add in some additional record for Jane, saying that she then was off sick for the afternoon for 4 hours. The system will also identify any exceptions based upon, as we said earlier, lateness. So for example, if someone arrives 5 minutes after 8, so we can see that she was supposed to arrive at 8 o'clock, but she arrived at 5 minutes past. Sorry. At 6 minutes past, it now tells me that Jane's arrived late. Now, because we're allowing a 6-minute grace period, it's still going to pay her. But if she then, let's say she arrived 8 minutes late, the system would then automatically, in this case, deduct 15 minutes pay from Jane. But all of this is configurable based upon each individual customer's rules. Also in real time, calculating the results. This is what goes to payroll. And this is the real power of the WorkForce solution. This is the real engine that drives how people are paid correctly. All of those rules that govern based on collective bargaining agreements, some of it's legislative. When do I get paid overtime? So if, for example, I worked particularly late on this day, we can see now in real time it's calculating that overtime, and we can then break that down by the days of the week, and we can see clearly that on Thursday I'm getting paid 5 overtime hours because I've got my 8 hours of normal and I've got my 5 hours of overtime in there. Final step, once I've sorted out those exceptions, I simply need to approve that timesheet. Very simple, straightforward process. Approve all, click OK. That timesheet is now ready to go to payroll. We would run the payroll interface. That would generate an output file containing all of those individual pay codes for each employee for each date. Can be then checked by payroll and then loaded up into the payroll application, and people then being paid based upon that data. And that's the overview of forecasting, scheduling, and time and attendance by WorkForce.
Thanks, Gordon. I just want to just kind of just get back to my slides there. If we, how do I find those on here? Excuse me a second. Yeah, great, excellent. And I think the key is we've kind of gone beyond TNA here to talk about the forecasting and scheduling capabilities. And I just want to reaffirm what we've done at the start. This is a comprehensive suite that we have for organizations to grow within and grow beyond in terms of what they currently do and how much efficiency and innovation they can work in their workforce. So it's a really comprehensive suite. And as we've mentioned before, going into 2020 and particularly next month, there'll be an awful lot of public announcements, demos, etc., where we bring our new suite to market, and we'll try to ensure that everybody that's attended this event gets invites to that, so they can come along and invite other members of their organizations to that. And Gordon touched upon these areas, how that's going to have some really core, compelling elements of it that make it a game changer for organizations to get value from workforce management solutions, around how that works with a central hub, absolutely mobile first, what the managers can do from workforce assistance, and how that the dynamic scheduling aspect of that really drives capabilities for efficiency and adaptability that have not been available to date for organizations to be extraordinarily more efficient with their time and, of course, finance. So that's pretty much, I think, what we want to cover today. Of course, this detail is going to be retained and published by Odessa. We have, as I said before, a number of really, I think, relevant customer success stories. We are years of experience of deploying our solution as an integrated add-on towards SuccessFactors, over 200 engagements with those guys, strong engagement across multiple countries and geographies, and great customer satisfaction. So I hope that's been valuable. I'll hand across back to the team, Sylvia and the team, and we'd be happy to take any Q&A from here. And I'll provide my details on here. And if there's any questions for me to take back to Gordon and the team and our product organization, please do pass them on either via Odessa or to ourselves, and we'll be happy to resolve them. So back to you, Sylvia.
Yes, thanks a lot, Tony. Thanks a lot, Gordon. I really like the presentation, especially the mobile demo was great. So thank you, very valuable indeed. Let's move now to questions and answers. There are some, so I will just ask you the questions, okay? First one, how does your time and attendance cope with the complexity of multinational or in-country collective bargaining agreements?
So yeah, we, as Tony said, we've deployed this solution in over 60 different countries, and in almost every case that's involved, that's included a time and attendance deployment. We need to make sure that not only the legislative rules within each of those countries are adhered to, both from a payment, a remuneration, but also a compliance perspective, making sure that those schedules comply with local legislation. Some countries can be rather punitive when it comes to penalising companies who break those rules, so it's very important from a financial perspective that any schedules or payments that are made to employees comply with the law. The power of rules and the simplicity of parameters is what drives our solution. It's rules driven, but with templates, country-based templates that sit on top that very quickly can stand up that product for each individual country, and then fine-tuning those templates with from a rules engine with specific parameters and configuration for example, different collective bargaining agreements for different verticals within different companies or in different countries, and also specific rules that might even be for an individual employee. And that's the power of the WorkForce time and attendance solution, is the fact that it's rules based, and any rule that can be written down, we can configure it.
Great, thanks a lot. I think that was very clear. Next question would be, how does scheduling deal with compliance with reference period hours that is common in many mainland European countries?
Yeah, that's a really great question. That's something we think might be unique to WorkForce, which is how we deal with this. What we see in many mainland European countries is that employees don't just work their contracted hours over a 1 week period. A full-timer works 37.5 or 40 hours, for example. We see many countries, if you take Finland, for example, some collective agreements within there specify that an employee has to work 160 hours over a 4 week period. But the hours that they can work in each week can flex up and flex down. You might work 35 hours in 1 week and 45 in another, based upon the varying demand of the business in each of those different weeks, whether that be production, whether it be the postal service, whether it be retailer. And the WorkForce solution will, at the press of a button, optimize those hours that are scheduled for each employee in each of those weeks within that reference period, but making sure that at the end of that reference period, they work for their 160 contractors. So you're really leveraging that level of flexibility offered by your employees and that reference period to maximize that demand, minimize inefficiency, all at the press of a button.
Good, thanks a lot. One more question before we close it. How can we be sure that your time and attendance can cope with the complexity of our payrolls?
Yeah, and again, another great question, because you get a whole raft of complexities when you deal with customers who different collective bargaining agreements, who've got different contracts potentially that they've brought across when they've perhaps acquired other businesses. And basically, we need to give our customers the confidence that when they purchase our software, that it will pay people correctly. And what we do is we challenge, if you like, our new customers to give us their most complex rules. So before they buy our software, provide us with those most complex rules. We will configure those in a proof of concept, replay those back to our prospects to give them the confidence so that they can validate that those employees would be paid correctly based upon the configuration that we've built.
And just to add to that, we see this with our existing customers as well, as Gordon mentioned there, with mergers and acquisitions and additional business divisions, business departments that come on to existing implementations, and our capability to adapt and evolve the platform with all of those changes and different advancements in those payroll complexities. So it is a major aspect of our strengths, I think. All over there.
Yep.
Yeah.
Great, thanks a lot, both of you. We have several demos we finalized today with the demo of WorkForce software, and next week we will have the conclusion. So for the conclusion, we will review the solutions that were presented, and we will also show a specific business case from a functional perspective as well as technical. And what we aim with this conclusion session is that you have a clear view after the demos on what are the next steps when selecting a workforce management tool. So if you have any questions, you can always contact me or Jose Maria. Well, I just wanted to say thank you especially Tony and Gordon for this great presentation and the effort that you put into it, and thank you all the attendees. So we will finalize the webinar now, and we hope to see you at the conclusions. Have a nice day.
Thank you.
Thank you. Bye-bye.
Bye.